Matthew 28, 18 through 20, Jesus commands his disciples to share Christ with all nations. Those are some of his very last words to his disciples before ascending to heaven. That passage is called the Great Commission, and it's to all of us, followers of Christ. The message of salvation through Christ is timeless, though the methods for sharing Christ constantly change. So today we're going to see a simple yet effective method to share the age-old, life-changing story. I'm glad you chose to join us today. I'm Barbara Black. I love to ask people the question, how did you come to Christ? There's always an interesting story, and often it starts out with someone sharing the gospel message. In my story, my mother was praying for me for some time, and she kept sending me scripture verses in the mail. God was at work in my life because of the prayers and the outreach of my mother. So one day, I received one of my mother's letters, and in it, she had included a newspaper article about a girl that I had known in my school years who had died from cancer. Her story prompted me to pray to receive Christ into my life. I imagine for probably all of us, someone else was involved with us in our salvation experience. Sharing the gospel with those the Lord brings across our path should be one of the greatest joys of our lives. Okay, what stops us from sharing Christ with those who need salvation? Well, here's some of my excuses. See if you can relate to any of these. I don't have time right now. I have to be somewhere. I don't know what to say. I don't know what the scriptures I should use. What if they say no? What if they have a question I can't answer? What if I say something that offends them? After I go through all my hesitations and excuses, I will often hear in my head something like this. What if you just open your mouth and let me do the speaking through you? So how can I share Christ? I believe most of us would like to share Christ with someone who needs salvation. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18b says, if anyone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. And so to that end, we are going to look at one simple way to be ready and prepared to share Christ when the opportunity arises. The cross of Jesus is the central element in any salvation experience. And we're going to see the story of the cross now presented in an intriguing and attention-grabbing method. This method involves telling a short story while folding a piece of paper. We first learned this presentation method from Dr. Harold Adolph, a missionary surgeon who served in Africa. So the story will appear in white letters, and the answers to the questions that are asked in the story and the instructions will appear in black letters. So let's begin the story. As told by Dr. Adolph, a prison guard once taunted a prisoner, saying, if you can take this paper, make a single straight cut, and produce a cross, I'll let you go free. So you want to use a sheet of computer paper measuring 8.5 by 11. So the story continues. The prisoner took the paper and he thought, I wish I was on a sailboat. Here is your first fold. Fold the paper like this to make a sailboat. The prisoner thought a sailboat would be nice, but my wife would probably like a house. And here's your second fold. Fold again, as shown, to make a house. Well, I don't think I can afford a whole house, so I'll have a half house. Now you're going to fold your whole house in half to produce this half house. A half house is still expensive, so I think I'll take a quarter house. Fold your half house in half again to make a quarter of a house. Okay, just to be safe, I will settle for an eighth house. You're going to fold that quarter house once more into an eighth house. Now open your eighth house back up and cut along the fold line, like this. It's probably easier to cut from the bottom up. After you cutting on the fold, this is what you're going to have, several pieces like this. Now open up all your paper bits to find your cross, and here it is. Lay out all of your unfolded bits. So in other words, unfold everything. It doesn't matter how you lay them out, just lay them out so you can see all of them. Now we're going to tell the story of the crucifixion. Begin with placing the cross in front of you. And now ask your audience, where was Jesus crucified? The answer is Mount Calvary. Place these two pieces of your paper to form Mount Calvary, as you see here in the picture. Now ask, what did the soldiers put above Jesus's head? The answer is a sign, and it read King of the Jews. Place one rectangle above the cross to show or represent the sign which read King of the Jews. Now ask, how did the soldiers divide Jesus's clothing? Answer, they gambled by throwing lots. Find the two small squares and place them on the right side of the cross to represent the dice the soldiers used to gamble for Jesus's clothing. Ask, who was crucified next to Jesus? The answer is two criminals. Place the two L shapes on each side of the cross as shown for the two criminals. Ask, how did the criminals react to Jesus? The answer, one of them turned away from Jesus, and one turned toward Jesus. Ask, how did the soldiers know that Jesus was dead? The answer, they put a spear in his side. You're going to place the second rectangle with the pointed end on the left side as shown. We know they pierced Jesus's heart, which would be in his right side. But as Jesus hung on the cross in our picture, Jesus's right side, as he's facing us, would be on the left side of your picture. Say, many people try to get to heaven without the cross of Jesus. Remove the cross from your picture. Ask, what remains if you take away the cross of Jesus? You're going to use the two rectangles and one small square to create an H. Next, use two Mount Calvary pieces and the second square to make an E, as shown here. And now use your two criminal shapes to create two letters L, as you see here. And what do the remaining pieces spell? That's hell. Ask, what is the only way to avoid going to hell? You're going to apply the cross of Jesus back over the word hell. And that is the only way to avoid hell and get to heaven, by applying the cross of Jesus. So the cross effectively opens gospel conversations. Additionally, from a teaching standpoint, the story and the actions of cutting and arranging the paper pieces to tell the story involves all styles of learning. We have the visual, seeing, the audio, which is hearing, and the kinesthetic, or doing something with your hands, learning style. This combination of three different learning styles increases retention of the learned material up to something like 94% retention. So let's review. You're going to use an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper and begin folding. As you fold, you are going to fold first a sailboat, then a house, half house, quarter house, and finally an eighth house. Once you have folded your eighth house, open back the eighth house fold and cut on the fold line. I hope that you will use this simple method to share the gospel. Thank you for following along with our paper cross, sharing the gospel presentation, and I hope you will practice and use this attention-grabbing method to share the gospel. Bye-bye.